The dawn sky over Loomis Prime shimmered in hues of violet as three suns climbed above the gleaming crystal woods. Ambassador Nera stood before the towering window of the council hall, her four slender arms folded tightly in unease, her blossom-shaped face carried visible sorrow as she gazed upon the tranquil city beneath. "The reports grow darker," murmured Counselor Tam, his voice thin and frail. He was ancient, even among their long-lived kind, his petals now faded silver with time. 3 more colonies lost to the Vorthans this week. Nera turned away from the view. Her wide, gentle eyes mirrored the dread now shared by all Kari. "How many worlds in total?" 17 in just 2 months, Tam answered, his hands trembling over the datapad. "They strip everything resources, knowledge, even the people for slavery." The Kari had never faced war. Their kind had flourished on Loomis Prime for countless ages without ever knowing conflict. They were plant-like beings, drawing strength from their suns and nourishment from the crystal-rich earth. To them, violence was not only alien, it was unthinkable. Their minds could not even imagine the act of intentionally harming another sentient life. "What word from our allies?" Nera asked, though the answer was already known. Tam's petals sagged low. The Thean Republic dispatched 2 aging fighters. The Silicon Collective contributed a few defense drones. The rest, he hesitated. The rest fear Vorthan retaliation. Nera stepped into the chamber's center where a vast holographic map of their galaxy glowed. Crimson markers spread across the rim, each one a fallen system, the Vorthans' conquest spreading like a blight. The trajectory was undeniable. They were pushing toward the core, toward Loomis Prime itself. "How much time remains?" she whispered. "Their main fleet was sighted in the Zirian system yesterday," Tam murmured. "At current velocity, 7 days." 7 days? Nera's limbs trembled beneath her. The Vorthans were a species born of nightmares, towering, armored predators who lived only for conquest. Forged on a brutal world of endless battles, they carried that savagery with them into the stars. Their warships were colossal, their weaponry devastating, and no mercy was ever granted to those who resisted. "We must send the distress signal," Nera said at last. The council hall fell into a heavy silence. A distress call was the final measure, a plea broadcast across the stars, begging any who could fight to come. It was an admission of helplessness, of failure to defend themselves. "To whom?" asked Counselor Vera, her young voice quivering with dread. "Who among the stars wields fleets strong enough to stand against the Vorthans? Who would endanger their own worlds for ours?" Nera could not answer. Slowly, she stepped to the communication dais at the chamber's heart. The console, carved from living crystal, responded to her thoughts. With trembling limbs, she brought the galactic array online. "This is Ambassador Nera of the Kari Council, speaking for all who dwell on Loomis Prime," she began, her words echoing into the void. "Carried to every civilized world. We send this plea to any species able of military aid. The Vorthan Empire advances upon our world with the intent to conquer and annihilate. We are a peaceful people, without weapons, without armies, without the means to defend ourselves." She faltered, drawing strength before continuing. Around her, the council sat in heavy silence. Beyond the chamber walls, the crystal city of their ancestors sparkled beneath the light of 3 suns, radiant, yet utterly unprotected. "We have 7 days before their fleet reaches us. If any among the stars would stand against the destruction of innocent worlds, hear our plea. We will give whatever we possess in return for your protection. Please, we do not wish to perish." The transmission ceased. Only the faint hum of the crystal walls remained. Nera sank into her seat, drained by the act of begging strangers to sacrifice for her people. Replies began arriving within hours. Most were rejections, courteous but firm denials from species unwilling to risk Vorthan vengeance. A handful offered scraps of aid, outdated craft, obsolete defenses, token detachments incapable of altering the outcome. By the fourth day, hope waned. The Thean fighters arrived, 2 decrepit vessels that would be reduced to wreckage within minutes against Vorthan dreadnoughts. The silicon drones were sturdier, but 50 machines could not stand against 300 warships. Their presence meant nothing. Perhaps we should consider surrender, Councillor Kell proposed during the evening session. His words drew shocked cries from the younger council, though several elders bowed their heads in weary agreement. What would surrender entail? Vera asked. Tam scrolled through records. From past conquests, they strip entire worlds, mining rare crystals to exhaustion. Populations are relocated to labor camps or sold into bondage across other systems. Culture, cities, everything erased within a year. The hall fell still once more. Death itself seemed less cruel, yet the Kari had no choice. They could not even die fighting. Violence was beyond them. On the 5th day, as the first 4th scout ships appeared at the edge of their system, an unexpected transmission arrived. It came from a sector of space that galactic charts marked as uninhabitable death worlds, places where the planets were so hostile that intelligent life was considered impossible. The message was short and transmitted on old-style radio frequencies that most advanced species had abandoned centuries ago. The voice was strange. Not the musical tones of the Kari or the harmonic resonances of other civilized size, but something rough and primitive. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Force," the voice said. "We received your distress call. Earth Isending Fleet, hold your position and maintain hope. Help is coming." Nara stared at the communication console in confusion. "Terran Earth, what species is this?" Tam was already searching the galactic databases. After several minutes, he looked up with a puzzled expression. "I can find no record of any species called Terran or any world called Earth." The transmission came from the Orion sector. "That entire region is classified as uninhabitable death worlds." "Death worlds?" Vera asked. "Planets with extreme gravity, toxic atmospheres, temperature variations that would kill most life forms, dangerous weather patterns, hostile flora and fauna," Tam explained. "The Galactic Survey classified them as Class 12 hazard zones. Nothing intelligent could evolve in such places." Councillor Kell shook his head. "It must be an automated response from some ancient probe. Perhaps a long-dead civilization left it there centuries ago." But Nara felt something different as she listened to the transmission again. There had been something in that rough voice. Determination, confidence, perhaps even anger at their situation. It did not sound like a machine. "What if it is real?" she asked quietly. "What if there really is a species out there that survived on death worlds?" The council exchanged uncertain glances. The idea seemed impossible, but her situation was desperate enough to grasp at any hope. "If such beings existed," Tam said slowly, "and if they somehow developed space travel despite living in such hostile conditions, what would they be like?" Nobody answered. The question was too frightening to consider. On the 6th day, long-range sensors detected the main Voran fleet entering their system. 300 massive warships, each one capable of destroying their entire world. Commander Vex, the Voran leader, sent this own transmission. A demand for immediate surrender or total annihilation. Nara stood again at the great window, watching her people go about their daily lives below. Children played in the crystal gardens. Their laughter carried on the warm breeze. Artists created beautiful sculptures that would stand for thousands of years. Scholars debated philosophy and mathematics in the great libraries. All of it would be gone in 2-4 hours, unless the mysterious Terran were real. Unless help was really coming from the death worlds of the galaxy. As the 3 suns set on what might be their final day of freedom, Nara made a choice that would change everything. She activated the planetary defense shields. Not because they would stop the Vorthans, but because they would buy time. Time for miracles. Time for the unknown beings from the Deathworlds, Toprov, were more than just legends. Time for humanity. To show the galaxy what survivors looked like. The alarm crystals throughout Loomis Prime began singing at dawn on the 7th day. Their high musical notes carried a message that made every Kari stop what they were doing and look up at the sky. With wonder and fear. Unknown ships detected at system edge, announced the automated voice from the Planetary Defense Center. Configuration unknown. Species unknown. Intent unknown. Ambassador Nera rushed from her sleep chamber to the council building. Her forearms moving quickly as she tried to dress herself while running. Around her, other Kari were emerging from their crystal homes. Their flower-like faces turned upward toward the stars they could not see in the daylight. The council chamber was already full of activity when she arrived. Counselor Tam stood at the main display, his old hands shaking as he adjusted the controls. The holographic image showed their solar system with new dots of light at the very edge. Ships that had not been there an hour ago. How many? Nera asked, trying to catch her breath. 12 vessels. Tam replied. They appeared suddenly as if they came out of faster-than-light travel. But the energy signatures aren't like anything in our databases. Counselor Vera was monitoring the communication channels. They're not responding to standard galactic greeting protocols. Wait, she pressed her hand to her ear. I'm getting something on the old radio frequencies. The rough voice from the day before filled the chamber again, but this time it was live. Kari Council, this is Captain Reed of Terran defense ship Valkyrie. We are here in response to your distress call. Request permission to establish communication link. The council members looked at each other in amazement. The mysterious Terran were real, and they had actually come to help. This is Ambassador Nera, she replied, her voice trembling with hope and fear. We grant permission for communication. Thank you for answering our call. Understood. Switching to visual communication in 30 seconds. Fair warning, we may look different from what you're used to. The main display flickered and changed. Suddenly, the council chamber was looking at the bridge of an alien starship. The room was dark, lit by red lights that would have hurt Kari eyes if they had been brighter. Metal surfaces reflected the glow, and everything looked hard and angular, so different from the soft, curved crystal architecture of their world. Then the being stepped into view, and several council members gasped. Captain Reed was clearly a predator. He stood on two legs like the Kari, but that was where the similarity ended. His skin was pale and covered in what looked like artificial materials. Clothing, Nera realized. High size faced forward like a hunter's, not to the sides like prey. Animals. When he spoke, she could see white teeth that were obviously designed for tearing meat. But strangest of all was Heist's expression. Despite his fearsome appearance, his eyes showed concern and determination. When he looked at them, Nera did not feel like prey being studied by a predator. She felt like someone who was being evaluated for protection. Ambassador Nera, Captain Reed said, his voice surprisingly glittle. I want you to know that we understand your situation. We've analyzed the Vorthan fleet movements, and we're here to help. But I need to ask some questions about your defensive capabilities. Defensive capabilities? Nera repeated, confused by the term. Your military forces, ships, weapons, trained soldiers. What do you have available to work with? The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Nera had to give the embarrassing truth. Captain Reed, we have no military forces. We have no weapons. We are a peaceful species. Wait, oh, not fight. The human's eyebrows moved upward, an expression the Kari did not understand. No military at all. How do you handle conflicts with other species? We negotiate, we trade, we find peaceful solutions. Counselor Tam explained. We cannot harm other intelligent beings. Our minds are not constructed for violence. Captain Reed was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, other humans moved around the bridge, and Nera could see that they all had the same predator features. Forward-facing eyes, expositive. Lean bodies that looked built for movement and action. I need to understand this clearly, the captain said finally. You have never had wars, never developed weapons, never trained soldiers? Never, Nera confirmed. We cannot even comprehend why intelligent beings would want to hurt each other. When we first heard about the Vorthans, we thought there must be some mistake. How can a species survive if it destroys other species? Another human stepped up beside Captain Reed. This one was smaller with longer hair and softer features, but still clearly a predator. Captain, I'm reading their biology now. They're plant-based life forms. They get energy from their suns and minerals from their soil. They literally have no need to compete for resources. Thank you, Dr. Mills, Reed said. Then he looked back at the Kari ambassador. I need to explain something about humans. We come from what you would call a death world. On our planet, everything is trying to kill everything else. We evolved as hunters, and we learned to fight because if we didn't fight, we died. The concept was so alien that Nera felt dizzy trying to understand it. Your own planet tries to kill you. Storms that can level cities. Temperature changes that go from freezing to burning. Predators with claws and teeth. Diseases. Poisonous plants. Earthquakes. Floods. Our world taught us to be survivors. How terrible, whispered Counselor Vera. How do you maintain peace among your own people? Captain Reed smiled. And for the first time, the expression did not look frightening to Nera. We learned that the only way to survive in a death world is to work together. We protect each other. And when we see other species being threatened by bullies like the Vorthans, we protect them too. You would risk your lives for beings you have never met? Tam asked in amazement. Where we come from, if you don't stand up for those who can defend themselves, you're not worthy of calling yourself human. The communication was interrupted by an urgent beeping sound. Another human, this one wearing different clothing, approached. Captain Reed, quickly. Captain, we have movement from the Voran fleet. They're changing course toward our position. Reed nodded. Time to intercept. 4 hours at current speed. The captain looked back at the Kari ambassador. We need to move our ships into defensive positions. I'm going to have Lieutenant Torres take some small craft and scout the enemy fleet. But I want you to understand something. We're not here to conquer or control your world. We're here to help you stay free. Why? Nera asked. What do you gain from helping us? Captain Reed was quiet for a moment, then answered in a way that would become famous throughout the galaxy in the years to come. Because it's the right thing to do, and because someone has to. The communication link shifted to show Lieutenant Torres, a younger human with quick eyes and confident movements. Ambassador, I'm taking a reconnaissance team to study the Vorthan ships. We need to know their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. Can you provide us with any information about their previous attacks? Counselor Tam quickly transmit data files. These are reports from the colonies they destroyed, but I must warn you, the Voran ships are enormous. Each one is larger than our biggest space station's size isn't everything. Torres replied with a grin that showed those predator teeth. We've learned a few things about fighting bigger opponents. As the humans prepared for battle, Nera found herself studying them with fascination. They moved with purpose and coordination, like a group mind made of individual parts. They did not seem afraid of the approaching Vorthan fleet, despite being outnumbered 25-1. Captain Reed, she called out. Are you certain you can protect us? The Voranshave never been defeated. The human captain turned back to face her, and his eyes held something that the Kari had never seen before. The quiet confidence of a species that had survived everything the universe could throw at them. Ambassador, the Vorthans have never faced humans before. They're about to learn why we're the only species that calls Deathworlds home. The communication link ended, leaving the Kari Council in stunned silence. Outside their crystal walls, the three suns continued their eternal dance across the sky. But something had changed in the galaxy that day. For the first time in their history, the gentle Kari had allies who were willing to fight. And those allies had teeth. Lieutenant Torres pressed herself against the cold metal wall of the asteroid. As the massive Vorthan dreadnought passed overhead, the ship was so large that it blocked out the stars, its dark hull covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities. Through her helmet's visor, she could see the glowing symbols that marked it. As Commander Vex's flagship. "Eagle 1 to Nest," she whispered into her radio. "I'm jetting a close look at their command ship. It's bigger than our intelligence report suggested." Captain Reed's voice crackled back through the communication system. "How big are we talking?" "Torres? About 3 kilometers long, maybe half that wide. I count at least 200 weapon ports on just side. I can see." She adjusted her position to get a better view. "But Captain, they're flying in a straight line formation. No scouts, no flanking ships. They're moving like they expect no resistance at all." "Copy that. Any sign of defensive maneuvers?" Torres watched as the rest of the Vorthan fleet followed their flagship in a perfect column. Each ship was identical in design. Massive, angular, bristling with weapons, but lacking any form of protective escort pattern. Negative, Captain. "They're flying like they are in a parade, not going to battle." "Understood. Return to base. We have work to do." Back on the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Reed studied the tactical display with his senior officers. The Vorthan fleet was indeed impressive. 300 ships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. But their formation showed something important about their tactics. "They've never faced real resistance," said Commander Black, the ship's tactical officer. "Look at this formation. It's designed to intimidate, not to fight." Dr. Mills, who had been studying theroconnaissance data, looked up from her console. "I've been analyzing their previous battles. Every species they've incurred has either surrendered immediately or offered only token resistance. They've never fought anyone who actually knows how to wage war." "What about their individual ship capabilities?" Reed asked. "Powerful energy, weapons, heavy armor, good shields," Black replied. "But they're big and slow. They're built to overwhelm weak opponents, not to engage in tactical combat." Reed nodded slowly. "They're bullies. They're used to picking on species that can't fight back." He turned to his communic. Kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into the rear ships of the fleet. The Varan shields designed to deflect energy weapons were useless against what amounted to hypervelocity bolts. Above us, the weapons officer shouted. "They're using the asteroid's gravity wells to mask their approach." Vex watched in shock as 3 of his ships erupted in explosions. The human shad somehow used the asteroid field itself as cover, moving through spaces that should have been impossible to navigate. "Return fire," he ordered. The Vorthan ships turned their massive energy weapons toward the attacking humans, but the small ships were already moving. They darted between asteroids, using the rocky debris as shields while launching coordinated attacks on the larger vessels. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered," reported the tactical officer. "They're using heightened run tactics, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. This was not how space battles were supposed to work." In Vex's experience, fleets faced each other in open space and traded fire until the weaker side was destroyed. But the humans were fighting like hunters stalking prey. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Captain Reed watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "Target their command ship's sensor array," he ordered. "Blind them first, then we'll show them what pack hunters can do." The human ships coordinated their attacks with precision that seemed almost telepathic. They moved in patterns that confused the Voran targeting systems, struck at weak points the enemy didn't know they had, and used the environment itself as a weapon. Sergeant Blake, leading a boarding party on the assault ship Phoenix, broke through the hull of a Vorthan cruiser using nothing more than shaped charges and determination. The Vorthans inside, used to operating in the safety of their ship's interior, were unprepared for close combat against beings who had evolved from persistence hunters. "They're inside our ships," came thepanicked reports from multiple Voran vessels. "How are they getting through our holes?" The answer was simple. Humans were smaller, more flexible, and far more determined than the Vorthans had ever imagined. They found ways into the massive ships through maintenance ports, damaged sections, and spaces that Theliger aliens couldn't even fit through. Commander Vex watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Ships were being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their shields. His crews were reporting boarding parties that seemed to appear from nowhere. And worst of all, the humans were doing it with only 12 ships. "Retreat," he finally ordered. "All ships, retreat to safe distance." But humans didn't let them run. They pursued the fleeing Vorthans like wolves, chasing wounded prey, picking off the slower ships, and forcing the survivors to scatter in panic. On Loomis Prime, Ambassador, Nera and the Council watched the battle through their long-range sensors. They could barely believe what they were seeing. The mighty Vortan fleet, which had conquered 17 worlds, was being destroyed by a handful of ships from a species they had never heard of. "How are they doing this?" Counselor Vera asked in amazement. "They fight like their world taught them to," Nera replied, remembering Captain Reed's words. "They are survivors, and now they are teaching the galaxy what that means." In space, the battle was already over. The Voran fleet, or what remained of it, fled toward the edge of the system. They had learned a lesson that would spread throughout the galaxy in the coming days. Deathworld predators were not to be underestimated, and humans had just announced their presence to the universe. The crystal forests of Loomis Prime had never known the sound of warfare. For millions of years, the only noises in peaceful groves, with a gentle chiming of wind through crystal branches and the soft songs of the Kari as they tended their gardens. But now the harsh crack of weapons fire echoed between the translucent trees. Major Cross crouched behind a cluster of blue crystals, watching through his scope as Voran soldiers moved through the forest below. The enemy troops were massive. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick armor that made them look like walking tanks. They moved slowly but deliberately, their heavy weapons sweeping back and forth as they searched for targets. Phoenix, leader to all units, Cross spoke quietly into his radio. "I count 40 Vorthans moving toward the civilian shelters. They're using the main crystal path just like we expected." The voice of Private Williams crackled back from somewhere in the forest. "Roger that, Major. Wolfpack 2 is in position on their left flank. These big guys really don't know how to move quietly, do they?" Cross allowed himself a small smile. Vorthans might be larger and more heavily armed, but they were making every mistake that predators learned to avoid on Earth. They traveled in straight lines, made noise, and bunched together in groups that made perfect targets. "Remember the mission," Cross reminded his troops. "Protect the civilians. The Kari are completely defenseless, so we are all that stands between them and slavery. 3 hours earlier, after the space battle had scattered most of the Voran fleet commander, Vex had played his final card. Instead of retreating completely, he had launched ground forces toward Loomis Prime surface. If he couldn't take the system by force, he would capture the population and sell them as slaves to cover his losses. The Kari had been horrified by the very concept. Ambassador Nera had actually fainted when Major Cross explained what the Vorthans intended to do with captured civilians. The idea that intelligent beings would deliberately cause suffering to others was beyond their ability to comprehend. "We cannot fight them," Counselor Tam had said, his forearm shaking with distress. We cannot even think about hurting another being. It is impossible for us. Then don't think about it. Cross had replied. Leave the fighting to us. Just tell us where your people are hiding, and we'll make sure the Vorthans never reach them. Now as the human soldiers prepared their ambush, the cultural differences between the species became even more apparent. The Kari hiding in their crystal shelters could only watch and hope, while the humans moved through the forest like ghosts, setting up a trap that would have made their wolf ancestors proud. Target the leader first, Cross ordered. Take out their command structure, and the rest will panic. Below them, General Krex led the Voron ground assault with confidence. His intelligence reports had described the Kari as weak plant-like beings with no military capability. The few small ships that had damaged the fleet in space must have been mercenaries, probably gone now that the real fighting was about to begin. Sir, his lieutenant reported, we're detecting Kari life signs in the crystal formations ahead. Approximately 200 civilians. Excellent. Craigs growled. Capture them all. The slave markets will pay well for exotic specimens. He raised his voice to address his troops. Remember, we want them alive but compliant. A few casualties will make the others more cooperative. The words reached the human soldiers through their translation devices, and Cross felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. He had fought in many battles against many enemies, but there was something special about his hatred for beings who threatened innocence. All units weapons free, he whispered into his radio. Show them why Earth's children don't make good prey. The attack began with silence. The first Vortan soldier simply disappeared from the rear of the formation, pulled into the crystal underbrush without making a sound. The second one turned to look for his missing comrade and found a human knife between his armor plates. By the time General Krex realized they were under attack, half his force was already down. Contact front, he shouted, swinging his massive weapon toward the crystal trees. Enemy forces in the forest, but there was nothing to shoot at. The humans moved like shadows, appearing just long enough to strike before vanishing back into cover. They used the crystal formations themselves as weapons, causing resonances that disrupted Vorthan communications and disoriented their heavy troops. Private Williams and his squad demonstrated Thepak hunting behavior that had made humans the apex predators of Earth. They worked together without needing talkspeak, communicating through hand signals and shared instincts. One would draw the enemy's attention while others struck from unexpected angles. Where are they? A Vortan soldier screamed, spinning in circles as his comrades fell around him. How many are there? The answer was 12 human soldiers against 40 Voron troops. But in the crystal forest, numbers meant less than understanding the terrain, moving silently and thinking like a predator instead of like a conqueror. Sergeant Blake appeared behind a cluster of purple crystals, his rifle spitting precise bursts of fire that found the weak points in Voron armor. When they turned to face him, he was already gone, and Corporal Stone was attacking from their other side. They're everywhere, the Vorthans reported in panic. We can't get a clear shot. But the humans could. They had spent their entire evolution learning to hunt creatures larger and stronger than themselves. They used patience, coordination, and the environment itself to even the odds. General Krex found himself alone, his soldiers either dead or scattered in panic through the crystal forest. His armor was damaged, his weapon nearly out of power, and he could hear the soft footsteps of pursuers getting closer. Then he saw Hishans. Through the crystal trees, he spotted a group of Kari civilians who had emerged from their shelter to help the wounded. The plant-like beings were tending to